This is Rich Lieberman. We are live on YouTube for the Friday, August 1st edition of the Media Pulse. So, look, yes, I've heard about the press release it was really a statement by Greg Papa that he has had a cancer diagnosis and is taking time off for the immediate future. So, my reaction. My reaction is like a lot of you. I was shocked. I knew a little bit that maybe something was awry because I know he takes vacations about a week before the 4th of July, before the rigors of the regular season and the preseason and training camp takes place. But this time he went beyond the month, I do believe, and something was amiss. I didn't know anything, obviously, about this. And my immediate reaction is I'm shocked, like a lot of you. Of course I am. I know that his brother succumbed to a prostate cancer uh, situation a few years back. Um, and look, obviously, I wish him well. I have not been the most ardent fan of Greg Papa of the last few years. I made mention of that. Obviously, this has nothing to do with that, but just wanted to state that. But nevertheless, I respect Greg Papa, think that he's been an integral and is an integral part of the Bay Area, really the national broadcast club. Does a great job on with basketball with the Warriors, did the obviously the Raiders for many years, and took the 49er position back about 5 years ago, over 5 years ago. So, look, I these things sometimes get lost in the immediate news of what is taking place, and that, I don't know at what stage his cancer was discovered. He didn't specify that in the statement. I'm not going to guess. Obviously, I don't want to go that round. So we just hope to God that they caught it in time, that he's able to battle it out and beat this diagnosis. Now, having said all of that, people have asked me already, well, who's going to take? They haven't made any kind of announcement yet. And I would guess that maybe he cuts back on travel, maybe doesn't do the preseason games on the road, maybe doesn't do any of them. I don't know. I know Roxy Bernstein has done NFL work. He, of course, has done a lot. He does a lot of ESPN. He did a lot of Cal games, quite experienced, quite good. I know the 49ers are very high on Roxy Bernstein. I think he would be more than adequate. And just knowing the way few people have operated over, the past, that he'd be high up on the list if this is something, talking about Greg Papa's condition, if it's something to which he is told by doctors don't travel, or maybe he himself is tired because of treatment. Again, this is all speculation based upon common sense. I would think they would have already met, they being the 49ers hierarchy, and talked about who would be there while Papa is in recovery. And I don't think it's going to be something to which absolutely keeps him from the booth. Maybe only does home games, doesn't travel. I don't know. This is just based on my own common sense. I've reached out to a few people, and the ones that count are not responding, or have responded. They're not saying anything yet, because I think they themselves, although I think they knew about this, they must have a while back. And I say a while back, I have no way of knowing this. I think they are meeting, if they haven't already, to find somebody to work the radio booth while Papa is in recovery. So I mentioned Roxy Bernstein. I also know that they're high on Bob Fitzgerald, I'm not a fan of Bob Fitzgerald, but that comes to Warriors games and never really have been. But in this timing, if it's certainly something to which he can do it, they probably would go in the direction of Bob Fitzgerald. Those are the two names off the top of my head. I think personally, I would really like to hear Roxy Bernstein, who works a lot of ESPN, independent broadcasts. He's well connected. He knows sports, does hockey for ESPN and college basketball, also does Major League Baseball for ESPN radio. But Roxy's very crafty, solid professional. I would think he would be on the list also. And again, I want to just point out something which in the old days you wouldn't have to point out, but I want to point out, and I'll just say a few things. While I have had some tremendous disagreements and a sentiment of disgust about Papa and his various broadcast styles or style with the 49ers. Maybe I thought he was a little too exuberant. That in no way is indicative of what I think of him as a human being. I think he's a good person. I respect Greg. He and I have had a few meetings in the past. When I had my big tribute for Jim Brown, I contacted NBC here locally, and I wanted Greg to be the MC of my Jim Brown dinner. He graciously accepted. We had a spectacular event for Jim Brown, the late, great Jim Brown, due to the Syracuse connection with Greg, Papa, Jim Brown, et cetera, et cetera. And that was a long time ago, but nevertheless, it speaks volumes of my admiration for Greg. We don't always agree on certain things. And yes, talk show host duties and broadcast duties with regards to play-by-play, we can agree to disagree. And I'm very passionate about that. And sometimes I get extremely, shall we say, personal. Not personal in a negative way. It's just I grew up with certain people in the Bay Area that I really loved and admired. And you all, myself included, we have been privy to and experienced some of the greatest voices, not just in football, but basketball and baseball with the likes of Lon Simmons and Bill King and Hank Greenwald and Wayne Walker and Don Klein and Ted Robinson. You can go on and on and on. Joe Starkey, in a way. And Greg kind of came here late in the game, no pun intended. He's still very much alive, obviously. And so when I get really passionate, and sometimes I could be perceived as being a little bit too negative, a little bit too, shall we say, aggressive in my critiques of various people, Greg, Papa included, obviously this kind of news supersedes everything else. And the fact that I'm even talking about it in this manner indicates maybe a defense mechanism on my part. No. It's an illustration and just a correct pronouncement here that, yes, Greg and I differ on certain things. His style's a little bit, not my cup of tea. But when things like this, real life takes over the fishbowl and the fantasy life called professional sports and sports in general, that supersedes everything else. And I want to just say this. I wish nothing but the best for Greg Papa. I wish him a Godspeed recovery. I hope he feels good. I hope he gets better. And I hope he can return to the broadcast booth for the San Francisco 49ers because he's a solid person, a solid professional. Even with differences aside and all that, I wanted to make it clear. So my reaction is I'm shocked. My reaction is that I know Greg is very strong, both emotionally and physically. And I hope to God he beats this. And I know from past experience with relatives that this is a tough situation. And I give my utmost thumbs up and Godspeed once again to the fast and safe and healthy recovery to one Greg Papa. Thanks.